Hey guys, a lot of times you wonder who's our band, and we don't always say hello, don't leave yet. I just want to say everybody's name. Claire, and then Elena, I do. Claire, raise your hand. And Elena, and Krista, Laurie on the back, Doxy and Mr. Cello, and our guest today with us, Stephanie Hort again, because Brad is out of town doing a camp. Also, the horns are on the back, Jim and David and Mike and Kevin. And we thank you. Oh, and Todd, don't worry. I'm going to mention Todd in the sermon. So Todd, on the drums, our regular drummer, John Portman, is away. Okay, guys. Now, that was pretty energetic, and so I'm going to try to keep going with all that energy. You can't always get what you want. A truer word could not be said, right? Can't always get what you want. Today, I'm going to join the ranks of people who make lists of things that they observe about life, and then they just throw them out there for people to consider or critique. These ideas, like the biblical proverbs, are short and sweet maybe, but we have to consider them with caution and within context. One of my favorite biblical proverbs is there in your bulletin. It says, like a thorn bush in the hand of a drunk is a proverb in the mouth of a fool. The emphasis there for me is anybody who's just got one proverb for you, I mean, look out. It's, these are not end-alls, be-alls. And in true 11:11 style, we're going to question some things because we should. So, no one word, no pithy saying covers everything, and that's a wisdom. Could you get that door, please? That's a wisdom to remember. So, you know what? Our brains really like numbered lists. You know why? And that way we can kind of keep up with where we are, and we know we're finally about to be to the end. So I'm going to give you 10 pithy sayings or observations about life. Number 1, you can't always get what you want. I think that's pretty mature thinking by 29-year-old Mick Jagger. His life would suggest that he wasn't all that mature, at least at that time, but I'm not judging him, just saying, sometimes there's clues. The song and the phrase, however, have continued with us for 47 years, I think it is. It's part of the currency of our language. You can't always get what you want. There was a 1983 movie, The Big Chill. And in one of the early scenes of that movie, college friends have gathered about 15 years after they graduated. They're there because one of their friends has died. And so we see the camera moving through the chapel, and then it pans over to the organist. We see her somber face. She places her fingers on the keyboard, and you know what she plays. You can't always get what you want. A little humor in the face of death. But even though everybody knows it, we all know you can't get what you want always. Do you find it extremely easy to expect that you should? Or that you might, or you better? Well, this expectation, this assumption, can create a situation where one could get pretty well pushed out of shape if things do not go like you want. And so as simple as it sounds, keeping an earworm of you can't always get what you want might be useful in helping us sort of tamp down our reactions sometime. But that song ends up telling us we get what we need. And we always question things around here. I'm going to push back just a little bit about that. I'm going to challenge that, even though sometimes religious people like to hook into that one and say that maybe is a way to keep up the God as Santa Claus idea. That is that we pray for things, and when we don't get them, then we try to comfort ourselves or each other, and we say, well, we got what we needed. Rabbi Harold Kushner wants to push back on that. His young son died too early. And don't our sons always die too early? And he said, I just like the idea of presuming that God gives us things like the death of a child or unanswered poverty so that we might learn some great lesson. The truth is we have to grapple with not only do we not always get what we want, but sometimes what we get is not what we need. And so the faith challenge is this. The honest faith challenge is to keep our eyes open to love, which is always constant, and to support that is usually somewhere nearby, so that we can find courage to meet things when we don't always get what we want or what we need. Number 2, rudeness is still rude. Rudeness in our culture has taken on sort of a glamorous recklessness, whether in the comfort of our home or while waiting endlessly in the line at Kroger, while the lady in front of you is scrambling through her oversized bag, and I have 2 of those because her credit card has fallen to the bottom and she can't find it, and the bag is emblazoned with words like, "Real women don't let friends carry ugly purses," all the while that ice cream that you almost talked yourself out of buying is melting in your cart. Now, maybe she's the one who's being rude or thoughtless or not on top of her game, but accidentally shoving her with the cart, that would be rude. Mumbling under your breath about the abyss that is her purse, that would be rude. Actually, being rude is also hazardous to our health. A 2016 Dutch study showed that rude or demanding patients are more likely to be misdiagnosed than their more temperate counterparts. Maybe that's what was going on when the doctor was dealing with a rude patient when he wrote this in the medical chart. Patient had left toe amputated last month. Patient had left knee amputated year before. Oops. Beware of rudeness. Number 3, sometimes you don't know your own strength. I've told this story before, but bear with me. When my little brother was 7 years old, he threw a baseball through the window of our house, and of course he broke it. My mother asked that question that parents inevitably ask, defying all logic, defying all experience, all parental intuition that tells you that if you ask this question, you will not get what you want. And she said, "Why did you do that?" Now, kids have 2 good options here. They can plead insanity and say, "I don't know," or they can take the 5th and refuse to testify against themselves. Now, in my household, saying nothing was ill-advised. My little brother took neither of these 2 options. When Mom said, "Why did you do that?" he said, "I guess I didn't know my own strength." It's probably true of all of us. We don't know our own strength. We find ourselves feeling inadequate and stuck in any number of situations in our lives. We may feel like things are never going to change. Sometimes it takes us a while to realize the strength we have that's inside to deal with what's before us. And so we get scared and we get pessimistic and we get immobilized. And it might be a good time to take a Kairos breath, a time to remember that we've gotten through stuff before, that there is that inner strength perhaps from some other time, and we can draw on that. It's a time to take count of our assets, to say, what are my resources? Always including the people around us who love us very much. We are stronger than we think we are sometimes, and we're definitely stronger together. Number 4, sometimes it's tempting to let memories be the only prize we allow ourselves. Some of us in here are aging. And it seems hard. It seems hard not to look back to the time when we were younger and stronger. There's an Old Testament proverb that says it's not from wisdom that we ask, where are the days that have gone by? Those days when we were young and in the middle of things and we were the boss and our ideas were always listened to. I have learned that longing for the past is not just the stuff of growing older. I ran into an 8th grade boy the other day. He's headed into 8th grade. He's longing for elementary school. So I guess we all sometimes miss those things from the past to some degree. But the truth is, of course, we can't get those things back. And so, as redundant as it may sound to say, we have to be in the present. We have to be where we are. We have to be in the present where young people are thinking up new ideas and they're doing things in different ways than we have done them. We have to be in the present where the terra firma of our lives has shifted and things seem oh so different. And I think we have to question that notion that goes around in our heads and sounds something like the good old days. Really? Were they really that good? Usually they weren't all that perfect. So things are different than they used to be, but let's not let the past be our only prize. Let's shine our lights. Let's not deprive the world of our contributions, even though our contributions may be different than they used to be. Number 5, imperfect birds. Those of you who are in here raising children, and if you're a grandparent watching your children raise children, this one's for you. Your main job as a parent is to prepare yourself and them for the day when they will make their own nest. It's a really tough job to navigate between being involved and being enmeshed. It's hard to remember to take your child's dilemma with the appropriate amount of salt so they can figure out for themselves how to draw on their own strength, as I said earlier, and figure out what to do with their distress. But parents, it's really worth the try to figure that out. Anne Lamott wrote a book about relationship between parents and kids and between grandparents and kids, and the name of that book is Imperfect Bird. And her inspiration for that title is actually a Rumi quote: "Each bird must enter the nest made by another imperfect bird." Yeah, we're imperfect at parenting. And guess what? Kids are imperfect at being parented. So take heart. We are all imperfect birds. Number 6, sometimes fewer words are better. Don McMinn is this great blogger that I read. And he told this story. When Vijay opened his store, he put up a sign that said, "We sell fresh fish here." His father stopped by and said that the word "we" just puts too much emphasis on the seller and not on the customer, and so it's really not needed. So the sign was changed to "Fresh fish sold here." His brother stopped by and suggested that the word "here" was unnecessary. It should be done away with. It's superfluous. And so Vijay agreed, and the sign now says, "Fresh fish sold." Next, his sister came along, and she said, "The sign should just say fresh fish. Clearly, they're being sold. I mean, what else would you be doing?" Later, his neighbor stopped by to congratulate him, and then Vijay realized that passerbys could easily tell that the fish was fresh, and maybe mentioning the word fresh would seem like there's some question about it, and he would get all defensive, and so he just changed the sign to fish. As he was walking back from a break one day, Vijay noticed that one could easily identify the fish from the smell, even a long way off before you could see the sign. And so he realized that the word fish was no longer needed, and he took the sign down. A word to the wise and to people who like to talk a lot. Sometimes fewer words are better. Number 7. Remember, we're just doing 10. Everybody good? That old saying, walk in another person's shoes, that's really still a good adage. Sure, it's in conflict with the wisdom that we don't know what's in somebody else's head. We don't know what their life is really like. But that doesn't dismiss the value of trying. Why? Because our own worlds are too small. We're in our own heads 24/7. We're in our own shoes 24/7. And that's why if we're stoic and not overtly emotional, we may have a hard time getting with the person who is an emotionally robust person. We might not get them, and we might not understand how they experience the world. If we're, say, at ease in flying an airplane, we might not get why a person might be nervous. If we prefer rules and orderliness. It's going to be hard for us with those creative types who like a little chaos in the mix. So making the effort to walk in another person's shoes, it's a good challenge to take. It helps us think about what would it be like. It asks us to consider, what about that person who has a specific challenge? What would life be like for them? What about the person who lacks wealth and health? What would life be like for them? So maybe we should experiment again with that old adage, it's good to walk in someone else's shoes, so we can ask the question, what would it be like to be them? I'm going to invite the band to come back up so we can get ready for a great ending here. So band, if you're nearby. We've done 7 now, we have 3 more. Number 8, and I quote Anne Lamott, sadly, chocolate is not a food group. It's not. That's right. It says what? Oh, it's supposed to be food. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. It's sadly, and it's even sadly that it's not good. Yeah, sadder. Chocolate is not a food group. Number 9, I know some of you like to travel out of state. And so I just want to make you aware of some laws that are on the books so you'll take the proper caution, okay? In Minnesota, and I'm so sorry I didn't tell Tom and Linda this before they went on vacation because they visited Minnesota. I hope they know that in Minnesota, one may not cross the state line with a duck upon his or her head. Keep it in mind. In West Virginia, and musicians, really be sure y'all get this one. In West Virginia, it is against state law to whistle underwater. Okay? And in Georgia, my home state of Georgia, those engaged in llama-related activities, such as riding, training, or goofing around at the county fair, they are thoroughly responsible for any personal injuries they incur. Number 10, you really do have to know when to hold them and when to fold them. That great analogy for life was given to us by the song we all love by Kenny Rogers. It refers to the skill that a card player needs to have, knowing when to stay in the game and when to drop out. I find it a useful metaphor for dealing with conflict, even though I don't always live into this. There's a funny quote out there that says, sometimes you need to quit arguing and just let people be wrong. Yeah, right. I actually need to add, I need to quit arguing in the possible case that I am wrong. You know, we can definitely use a lot less arguing in the world, though I do want to push back and say a good argument can be useful if we can maintain civility, if we can hold on to respect while we do it. Short of that, it's just a shootout and nobody's left standing. But done well, a good argument with a fine sense of when to fold gives us the opportunity to walk away, reconsider our own point of view, gives us a chance to go back to number 7 and get into somebody else's shoes and see what their world might be like. And so I think it's a good idea to know when to hold them and when to fold them.